In the heart of West Africa lies a nation whose name speaks volumes about its character. Burkina Faso, meaning land of upright people, is a country defined by the resilience and dignity of its diverse inhabitants. It is a landlocked nation, bordered by 6 other countries including Mali to the north and Ghana to the south, placing it at a cultural and economic crossroads. The vast, semi-arid Sahelian landscape dominates its northern reaches, gradually giving way to more verdant savannas in the south. This geography has shaped the lives of its people for millennia, dictating the rhythms of agriculture, trade, and settlement. The nation is a vibrant mosaic of ethnicities, with over 60 distinct groups, each contributing its own unique language, traditions, and history to the national identity. Long before the name Burkina Faso was conceived, the lands it now encompasses were dominated by powerful and highly organized states. Among the most significant and enduring of these were the Mossi Kingdoms. According to rich oral traditions meticulously passed down by court historians, the Mossi states were founded around the 15th century by warrior horsemen migrating from the south, from what is now modern-day Ghana. The legendary Princess Yanenga is central to this origin story. She was a formidable warrior who defied her father to find her own destiny. Her union with a hunter named Riale produced the first Mossi emperor, Ouedraogo. Ouedraogo's name means male horse or stallion, a symbol of the cavalry-based power that defined the kingdoms. These kingdoms were a federation of powerful states rather than a single empire. Ouagadougou, Tenkodogo, Fada Ngurma. At the apex sat the Mogo Naba, the emperor in Ouagadougou, holding immense spiritual and symbolic authority over the other kings. This decentralized system proved remarkably resilient, allowing the Mossi to govern a vast territory and resist invasions from larger Sahelian empires like Mali and Songhai. Mossi society was built on a rigid hierarchy. The late 19th century marked a dramatic and irreversible turning point in the region. The scramble for Africa sent French military columns deep into the Sahel. Resources, strategic advantage, imperial prestige. By 1896, French forces reached the Mossi heartland. Despite spirited resistance, superior French firepower overwhelmed the legendary Mossi cavalry. Ouagadougou was captured. The Mogo Naba was forced to accept a French protectorate. This ended centuries of Mossi independence and signaled a new era. The land was folded into French West Africa, initially part of Upper Senegal and Niger. Officially carved out as Upper Volta in 1919, the French colonial project was primarily extractive. The administration imposed head taxes payable only in French currency. Many men were forced off farms, they sought work on French plantations in Côte d'Ivoire, or they enlisted in the colonial army. Forced labor and coercion disrupted agricultural cycles and social structures. New patterns of migration and dependency emerged. Colonial rule planted seeds of resistance, subjugation, economic exploitation, military conscription. On August 5, 1960, Upper Volta finally achieved independence from France, joining a wave of African nations casting off the shackles of colonial rule. The early decades of independence, however, were fraught with instability. The new nation inherited colonial borders that enclosed a diversity of ethnic groups and a political system modeled on that of the former colonizer. A succession of civilian governments and military coups marked the first 2 decades of sovereignty. The nation remained heavily dependent on foreign aid, particularly from France, and political power concentrated in the hands of a small urban elite. This cycle of instability was dramatically broken in August 1983 when a charismatic, idealistic 33-year-old army captain, Thomas Sankara, seized power in a popularly supported coup. Sankara was no ordinary military ruler. He was a visionary intellectual, a fervent Pan-Africanist, and a revolutionary thinker inspired by Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. He immediately set about transforming the country from the ground up, seeking to break the chains of neo-colonial dependency and instill pride and self-reliance in his people. In 1984, he renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, meaning land of upright people. Sankara's 4 years in power were a whirlwind of revolutionary change. His government launched ambitious national programs focused on public health, education, and environmental protection. He led a nationwide immunization campaign that vaccinated millions of children against meningitis, yellow fever, and measles, an achievement praised by the World Health Organization. He championed women's rights like no leader in West Africa had, banning female genital mutilation, banning forced marriages, and appointing women to high government posts. To achieve his goals, Sankara promoted self-sufficiency. He rejected aid from the International Monetary Fund, arguing he who feeds you, controls you. He urged people to consume local goods and wear the Faso Danfani as a symbol of pride and economic independence. However, his radical policies, his anti-imperialist rhetoric, and his attempts to dismantle the power of traditional chiefs and entrenched elites created powerful enemies at home and abroad. On October 15, 1987, Thomas Sankara was assassinated in a coup led by his close friend Blaise Compaoré, bringing a tragic and abrupt end to one of Africa's most audacious revolutionary experiments. The assassination of Thomas Sankara in 1987, it ushered in a long period of rule under Blaise Compaoré. For 27 years, Compaoré dominated the political landscape. He systematically dismantled many of Sankara's revolutionary policies, and he realigned the country with Western powers, particularly France. His tenure brought a degree of political stability and economic liberalization that attracted foreign investment, but it was also marked by widespread corruption, cronyism, and the suppression of political dissent, leaving many ordinary citizens feeling disenfranchised. Long-simmering public discontent finally boiled over in October 2014. When Compaoré tried to amend the constitution to run again, massive protests erupted across the country. They were led by a new generation of youth activists. Hundreds of thousands filled the streets of Ouagadougou and other cities. The parliament building was set on fire. The military refused to support the president. After 27 years in power, Blaise Compaoré was forced to flee the country. The post-Compaoré era did not bring the lasting stability many had hoped for. A transitional government paved the way for democratic elections in 2015. Those elections were won by Rochmark Christian Kabore. But his presidency faced a new catastrophic challenge, a violent jihadist insurgency from neighboring Mali. Groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State began launching attacks. They targeted security forces, they targeted civilians, they targeted symbols of the state. The violence escalated dramatically, displacing millions of people. It closed thousands of schools, and it shuttered health centers across the country. Vast swaths of the country were plunged into fear and insecurity. The government's inability to contain the violence sparked growing frustration and anger, particularly within the military. The military felt under-equipped and unsupported in its fight against well-armed insurgents. That mounting crisis created fertile ground for further political instability. Public faith in the democratic process to solve the security crisis eroded. Many began to long for a stronger hand to restore order. This sentiment culminated in a military coup in January 2022. The coup overthrew President Kabore. The new military junta, led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, promised security would be its top priority, but the attacks continued unabated, setting the stage for yet another dramatic power shift just a few months later. As the security situation in Burkina Faso continued to deteriorate under the military junta of Lieutenant Colonel Damiba, discontent simmered within the ranks of the armed forces. Younger officers serving on the front lines of the brutal conflict felt that the leadership in Ouagadougou was failing to provide the necessary strategy and resources to win the war. They witnessed the daily toll of the violence on their comrades and on the civilian population and grew increasingly impatient with the lack of progress. Among these disillusioned officers was a quiet but determined 34-year-old army captain named Ibrahim Traoré. He was the head of the Cobra Special Forces unit in the northern town of Kaya, a region hit hard by the insurgency. On September 30, 2022, just 8 months after the first coup, Captain Traoré and a group of fellow officers took decisive action. They appeared on state television to announce that they had removed Damiba from power, accusing him of failing to quell the jihadist violence. Traoré, his face partially covered by a mask and wearing his combat fatigues, was presented as the new leader of the nation. His rise was sudden and unexpected. Unlike previous leaders, he was not a high-ranking general from the political elite, but a young captain who had earned his stripes in the heat of battle. This background immediately resonated with a significant portion of the population and the military, who saw him as one of their own, a soldier who understood the reality of the fight. Ibrahim Traoré's biography is that of a career soldier. Born in 1988, he attended the University of Ouagadougou before joining the army in 2009. He quickly rose through the ranks, served in UN peacekeeping missions in Mali, and gained extensive combat experience fighting against the very insurgents he now pledged to defeat as the nation's leader. Public opinion surrounding Captain Ibrahim Traoré is complex, but a significant portion of the Burkinabe population has shown enthusiastic support for his leadership. Crowds of young Burkinabe citizens at rallies, holding portraits of Traoré and Sankara, in the streets of Ouagadougou, and in other towns. Many waving Burkinabe flags, sometimes Russian flags. This support is rooted in frustration with years of perceived failure to confront the jihadist insurgency. Many see Traoré's youth, his frontline military experience, and his decisive, no-nonsense rhetoric. His public embrace of Thomas Sankara's Pan-Africanist ideals and anti-imperialist ideals has energized the nation's youth. Traoré has launched a massive recruitment drive for the army and for the volunteers for the defense of the homeland, mobilizing citizens into the national war effort to build unity and shared responsibility. His government demanded the withdrawal of French troops and sought new security partners, a move hailed as a step toward sovereignty, but the path ahead is fraught. The primary hurdle is the ongoing security crisis. Jihadist groups remain resilient and continue deadly attacks in rural areas. Restoring state control will require addressing root causes, poverty, lack of opportunity, and local grievances. Arming civilian volunteers risks escalating intercommunal violence if not managed. Beyond security, Burkina Faso faces significant economic and humanitarian hurdles. The conflict has created a fast-growing displacement crisis, straining resources and host communities. A diplomatic pivot away from traditional Western partners may affect foreign aid and investment. The ultimate hope is lasting peace, stability, and sustainable development. Whether Captain Traoré can navigate these treacherous waters remains the central question. The journey will be difficult, but the resilience and determination of the Burkinabe people remain the nation's greatest asset.